Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us this evening at our first Connected Educators webinar of the 2016 through 2017 school year. This is Bill Brannick speaking from the Office of Catholic Education and the Technology Department, and we are thrilled to be with you this evening for our opening webinar on growth mindset. Thanks so much to everybody for carving out some time with us this evening to spend a little bit of time not only in reflection but also in opportunities for further growth. And as always, we encourage you that as we conclude our webinar tonight, that you continue to share any resources, any questions from our experience this evening, and continue the conversation online on the various social media platforms using the hashtag AoPTech. So our agenda is similar to that you may have witnessed last year in our webinars. Shortly we will open with our prayer. We will talk about the platform itself, some basic introductions, and then we'll dive right into the presentation. So as we begin this evening, I would ask that as we are gathered together, that we begin as we do all good things in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, by the light of the Holy Spirit, you have taught the hearts of your faithful. In the same Spirit, help us to relish what is right and always rejoice in your consolation. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. And St. John Newman, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Just as a reminder, we will be providing resources after our presentation, both at the conclusion of the presentation and also in a follow-up email that you will receive just about this time tomorrow night. One thing that we have changed this year from last year is that all of our archived recordings are now being hosted on our AoPTech YouTube channel. So that if there is any point this evening that you do want to ask our presenter Kathy a question, and you're asking that a vocal question, just to let you know that we will still continue to identify you by first name, but that question will be recorded and will be a part of the archive. If you prefer to ask a private question that we can then just use the question itself, you can always ask that in the chat box down at the bottom of the right-hand side on your floating control panel, and our tech integration coaches will be in the background monitoring that to be able to reply, and any of those questions will have the opportunity to be able to bring up at the appropriate time frames for the breaks. For our introductions, our tech integration coaches that we do have with us this evening, as always, Alyssa DeVito, who joins us once again. And if you have not met our new tech integration coach, Mr. Aaron Hines, I would like to be able to introduce everyone on the webinar to Aaron this evening. And certainly, Alyssa and Aaron, I appreciate your time with us this evening and all the preparation for this webinar tonight.
Happy to be here. Excited for this.
Hi, everyone.
And moving over to our featured presenter, Ms. Kathleen Szymborski of Archbishop Ryan. Kathy is the ELA chair and has spent more than 25 years in the Archdiocese, 20 plus at Ryan and 6 years at St. Catherine of Siena. We're really thrilled to be able to have Kathy not only with us this evening, and she did present earlier to the secondary webinar 2 weeks ago, but also to the experience and the enthusiasm that Kathy brings on a daily basis to the classroom and to the students at Archbishop Ryan, and for sharing her expertise with us this month. Kathy is a featured blogger through the Penn Literacy Network, which you can find the link to her blog there, and you can also follow Kathy at Twitter. And just a reminder, these resources, these links will all be provided for you both at the conclusion of the webinar and the follow-up that you will receive tomorrow. So at this point, it is now time for our presentation. So Kathy, I am going to come over and give you controls of the presentation right about now.
Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate that. And thanks everybody for being here tonight. I'm excited to talk to you about one of my favorite things, and I'm so grateful that you carved out some time tonight to spend thinking about this. I do look forward to chatting with you, so please feel free to ask any questions or any comments, type them, or when we have a Q&A in a little bit, I'd love to hear your ideas. What we're going to talk about tonight is all of the things that have to do with growth mindset. So the first half of the presentation, I'm going to be concentrating on just growth mindset in general and some of the concepts. And the second half, I'll be discussing more about how we can implement different strategies and ways to build growth mindsets with our students in our classrooms. Recent research has indicated that there is an explicit relationship between what we believe and how we act. For example, you can't just say something, just saying you can't do something almost guarantees the likelihood that you will not be able to do that. We all say things like this to ourselves at some point. It's just human nature. But the more negative things that we say, the more likely it is that we believe them. And this key, the relationship between belief and behavior, is really important to some of the work that we're going to talk about tonight that has been done by noted educational psychologists. So I asked you in advance, I think that Alyssa sent the link out to watch a little video, a 6-minute video by Angela Duckworth about grit. Angela Duckworth is at the University of Pennsylvania, and she does a great deal of work in this. She studied many groups of people, including cadets at West Point, as well as adults and children, and she found the one common thing that all people who are successful have is this characteristic that she labels as grit. She describes grit as the ability to continue working on something long-term despite setbacks or difficulty. And she found through her research that grit, not IQ, not talent, but that grit is the most effective and the best predictor of success. When you watch the video from Angela Duckworth, I really liked when she said that she wasn't really sure exactly how to help kids develop grit, but she knows that we need to become grittier about teaching our students, grittier in finding ways to help our students to become gritty. And she did say that the ways to find perseverance and persistence, which are key aspects to have in learning, is to help kids to become successful learners, is that they be able to tolerate setbacks, that they be able to face obstacles and not give up. And what's really interesting is that she says the only way that she knows of at all to get those characteristics fostered in kids is to help them develop a growth mindset. And the person who is connected with all the work with growth mindset, noted psychologist Carol Dweck. So in a second or two, I'm going to turn this back to Alyssa. She's going to show us a quick video that defines growth mindset. Okay, so Alyssa.
Hi everyone. Should be seeing my screen now, and I'm gonna hit go on this presentation, then I'll kick it back to Kathy.
See, right. And I suspect that if you were to talk to someone who could read back then and ask them what percentage of the population do you think is capable of reading, they might have said, well, maybe 20%, 25%. Now you fast forward 400 years, we know that that's a wildly pessimistic prediction or assumption. That's actually 99.99% of the population is capable of reading. Well, what similar blinders do we have on today? So I'm excited to have Carol Dweck here, one of my personal heroes, who's strongly influenced a lot of work at Khan Academy. Carol, great to have you here.
Pleasure to be here, Sal.
So what I'd like to start off with, this word growth mindset, which I believe you came up with. Mm-hmm. When did you come up with that? What was the motivation, and what is it?
A growth mindset is when students believe that their abilities can be developed. A fixed mindset is when they think, I just have a certain amount and that's it.
And this isn't just kind of feel-good talk. This is actually based in science, that you actually the brain actually does grow stronger. Neural connections actually do form when you struggle.
In study after study, we have shown that kids who have a growth mindset get higher grades. It's not a choice between the outcome and the mindset. It shows that if kids engage deeply and effectively in a learning process, the grades and test scores are a natural byproduct. Kids who are praised for their intelligence, our research shows, don't want a challenge afterwards. They don't want to work hard on something. And if they hit difficulty, that's it. We find that when we praise or parents praise the process the child engages in, their hard work, but not just hard work, their strategies, their ideas, their focus, their perseverance, then the student learns these are the ingredients of success. If it gets harder, I'll just do these things. We've already done work with you of inserting growth mindset statements before math problems. And we found together that kids did better.
So one thing that I hope is the folks listening to these videos go out there and tell their parents, tell their children, tell their peers, tell their teachers, tell their students about growth mindset. Tell them that their brain grows when they get a question wrong, when they struggle, when they look at their errors and they say, hey, that's interesting. You shouldn't be ashamed of your mistake. You should view that as something that's interesting, something to explore. And when you do that, you will actually physically form neural connections. Your brain will actually grow.
All right, Kathy, I'm kicking the presentation back to you.
It's kind of been a growth mindset part of my life to get all this kicking back and forth going, so I'm just putting that out there. That video, I don't know if it showed on your screen the same way it did on mine, but the lips didn't match the words, but the words are very important. I want to do a little bit of a deep dive about the differences between what Carol Dweck has described as a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. For years, we believed that the single best predictor of academic success was IQ. And for those of us who were teaching elementary school back, I don't know if it's still on the test, but way back I remember the CSI, the Cognitive Skills Index, was sort of correlated to IQ. And so we looked at those scores, and we believed that these kids who had these certain scores were sort of static, that this was what was given to them at birth, this was their ability level, and we looked at people, and we actually grouped people according to their IQ. We didn't realize that really what we were doing was fostering fixed mindsets. A fixed mindset is when people believe that the only way they can be good at something is when they have the talent for it. They believe that no amount of work or effort will make them smarter or better at doing something. A fixed mindset has the idea behind it that success is really out of a person's control, that we were given a certain amount at birth and that's it, no more. Nothing that we could do could change our ability to learn something that we were not naturally gifted in. On the other hand, what research has found is that, in fact, intelligence can be developed. We can learn things that we're not naturally gifted in if we're passionate about working hard to do that. Dedication, perseverance, persistence, grit, these are all factors of growth mindset, and this is the idea that we can actually develop our abilities. Before we go any further and discuss the educational implications involved with growth mindset, I want to underscore here that a growth mindset is good for anyone, any age, any life station. There are many benefits for adopting a growth mindset. People with a growth mindset are happier people. They enjoy life more. Research indicates that people with a growth mindset have better self-esteem because they believe that with hard work and resilience, they can learn anything. They also are less likely to be stressed about having to be perfect. They're confident and willing to try things that are hard. It's important to note, though, that throughout our lives and even day to day, minute to minute, we can fluctuate between growth and mindset. It's not like you get to growth mindset and you're there forever. Developing a growth mindset requires more than just trying harder as well. You'll see that there's going to be some research out there that talks about Carol Dweck's ideas about praise. It's not enough, and it's not enough. Just to try harder is not enough, and we're going to discuss that further as teachers for the things that we can do in our classrooms to help kids go that next step. But in the meantime, especially as adults, we're going to become much more aware of those times when we have a growth mindset and when we have a fixed mindset. And it's kind of a neat experience when you start to catch yourself in those different frameworks. So I'd like to talk to you about the F word. One of the most important aspects that we need to consider when we talk about a growth mindset is how we react to failure. Everybody fails. We teach that to kids from the time they're born. Nobody's perfect. At one time or another, all of us have learned from our mistakes, and we tell that to our students as well. But other times we failed and it's made us angry or resentful, or it may have maybe made us think that we're just not good at something. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story about one of my most epic but valuable failures. A few years ago, there was a Google level teacher certification camp offered, like there is one now that you have the opportunity to join up with oh, I just forgot the guy's name, but Gene Carbone is associated with them. But this is this great opportunity that you have to go to Wood and maybe take these classes. The one that I was able to take part of didn't take, so we were all excited about getting this Google certification, a couple of my friends and I at school, and it fell through, so we were like, let's do this ourselves. One by one, people dropped out. We were going to do it over the summer. We were going to split it up. And one by one, people dropped out because they were too busy in the summer. It was too much with the grandkids or the kids. And it was left to 2 people. So I kind of would have dropped out too, except that this other person who was in this group kind of wouldn't let me. Like, that was it. We were going to do this. So since I had kind of started this whole thing, I was stuck doing this. I worked through the modules that Google offered. I learned some new things, like Keep, which we just heard today, has been updated. And I also reviewed some things that I already knew. My friend, her name is Nancy, and I talked a lot about how we were progressing through the modules. And when we were both ready, we picked a date to meet at school together to take the test. So there we were in the middle of summer in an air-conditioned library across from each other, seated for moral support. Now, if you've ever taken the test or if you ever do, there's a little window with your picture because they watch who you are, you know, that you're not getting some ringer in to sit for the test, that you are who you say you are. So we would look up at each other, but we were careful not to talk to each other because we didn't want to get in trouble in any way. Good Catholic girls. We would glance at each other, but I thought the test was pretty straightforward. I was confident I was doing well. I was done first. I pressed the button. I got Nancy's attention, and I kind of mouthed that I was ready to press the button, and it says waiting, 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 and then I got the message. You failed. I told Nancy. She was sort of shocked. I also think she was concerned about her progress. I told her just keep going, and eventually she hit the submit button. We both held our breath, and she passed. I don't know who was more upset, to be honest, me or Nancy. My stomach dropped. I was angry. I was upset. I kept thinking to myself, I'm not doing this again. I don't need this. I'm in my 50s. I don't need this stuff. You know, who does Google think they are anyway? Come on, those stupid questions that they asked, you know, I don't need that certification. What's a piece of paper going to do? They ask a question like, can you print from a Chromebook? Well, no, you really can't unless you have an air printer. But it's not, they were asking black, white questions, and I wanted to answer things in gray, and I just kept getting myself worked up. I even wrote to the people, and I said, you know, what is wrong with your you don't know how to make questions right. They were, you know, what does this have to do with education? It doesn't even have any good standards of test taking measures and stuff like that. So they wrote back that, hey lady, we're the people that administer the test, and there's nothing that they could do. And if you fail the first, you know, when you fail a module, you have to wait a few weeks to do it again. I thought, there's no way I'm doing this again. I don't need this. I kept saying, why would I put myself through this? It's only $15. I don't need to waste $15. I'm not going to do it. I even reached out to my friend Gene Carboni, and he's a judge, and he was certified way before I was, and he's a trainer now as well. And I was like, Gene, you know, can you believe this? And he's like, Kath, I know you're going to do it. I said, no, I'm not. I'm never going to do it. I'm never doing it again. And then a few weeks passed, and I started thinking about, you know, all right, I'm going to do this. So I went through the modules again, and I tried a different strategy. I read everything. I reread everything, even the stuff that I knew that I knew that I knew. I wrote notes. I practiced. I reread again. When the time came for the test, I did it by myself at home. I told my husband to get out of the room, stay away from the house, don't come near me. I methodically, slowly, carefully, thoughtfully went through that test, and when it came time to press submit, I did, and I did in fact pass. That experience was much more for me than just getting a Google certification. What it did is it showed me how I lived a transformation from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. The fixed mindset, I tried, I failed, I was done with it. But that little voice inside of me, or that little impetus inside that just decides to just one day start again, try some new things, work it a little differently, you know, try some new strategies, well, that was the growth mindset. I persisted, I persevered, I was gritty. It was a down and dirty process, but hard work and resilience won out. I gained a lot more than Google certification that day. I gained really a true view into how to develop a growth mindset. And I'm sure that many of you have your own stories as well of different times that you have tried something and failed at it. And getting in touch with that and being aware of that is extremely important for understanding this framework. You know, trying hard, like I said earlier, that's nothing new. We've been saying that to our kids forever, and before that, the adults in our lives were saying that to us. But it really is that try again, try it a different way strategy that makes all the difference. You know, I think what's really neat is some of this research has indications for physical changes in the brain. If you think back to what Sal Khan from Khan Academy was saying in that video clip, he discussed the concept of neuroplasticity. What scientists have discovered is that every time we think or say or do something, we create these neural net paths, netways in our brains. The more we think something, the more we say something, the more we do something, the more pronounced that pathway becomes. So it actually becomes easier over time and more likely that we would say those thoughts, do those things, think those, say those words, think those thoughts. When we introduce a new way of thinking or saying or doing something, it creates another new pathway, but it takes time for that different path to become, in a sense, bigger. The more we persist with new ways of thinking and saying and doing, the stronger that connection becomes. And if we do it enough, that pathway becomes the stronger one and the one that we're more likely to easily choose. See, growth mindset is not just about trying harder. It's about creating new neural networks. When we work through our mistakes and when we find new ways to approach them, that is when we rewire our brain. That inner voice, you know, the one in your head that says you're no good at this, if you don't know what voice it is, you should be hearing it right about now. I do joke with the kids and say if you're hearing more than one voice, we'll talk about that another time. But that voice in our head, that's the one thing that's essential to change. We need to catch ourselves saying things like that are fixed mindset phrases like I'm no good at this, and purposefully replace them with growth mindset phrases. The loop has to change. When we change our thoughts, remember, we change our behaviors. So we have to change that loop. We have to set it on a different way of playing. One thing Carol Dweck says is that we need to hear the voice in our head and recognize the internal fixed mindset talk and change it. So she gives a following example. She says something like this, and it's on the Mindset the Mindset online website that she has. She says a fixed mindset example would be, this would have been a snap if you really had talent. The growth mindset statement would be something like this: that is so wrong. Basketball wasn't easy for Michael Jordan, and science wasn't easy for Thomas Edison. They both had passion and they put in tons of effort. So the number one characteristic of being able to develop this growth mindset is recognizing that internal monologue, the self-defeatist negative talk that we have, and spin it into positive. And the funny thing is that it really is amazing how much happier people become. I know I've become much happier by not being so hard on myself, by not saying things like, you know, come on, what are you, you know, you're getting old, what, you can't keep up with this stuff anymore, and to just be more gentle and more open-minded. And it's not like you take it easy, because you certainly don't. You actually work harder than ever, but it's not anymore about a black and white type of thinking. It's about shades of colors and about ways of finding new approaches to solve things that are harder for us to figure out. So this is probably a good spot for us to take a break, and I think I'm going to hand it back to Bill.
Great, thanks, Kathy. You can keep the screen, but if anybody has any questions that they would love to ask, you know, of Kathy right now and where we are in the presentation, feel free on your control panel, the little floating panel out on the left-hand side at the very bottom. There should be a hand there with an arrow pointing up. You can click that if you have a question to raise your hand. We'll take a look to see if anybody has any questions. Don't forget as well, on the same control panel down at the bottom, there's a chat window that you can type questions into. Those questions won't go out to all the attendees. They will go directly to Alyssa and Aaron, who are monitoring that chat window. So Alyssa and Aaron, any questions come through to either of you?
No, all good here.
All right, perfect. Well, Kathy, it looks like you're hitting the nail on the head at this point, so I am going to let you to keep going, and we'll see as we move forward any questions that may pop up.
Okay, Bill, thank you. So let's take a look at specifically how growth mindset relates to our career, our vocation. As teachers, probably we can't help it. Anything we learn that might relate to our kids, we already start to think about, you know, how can we have this in the classroom? A research group from Education Week did a study, and they published the results, a detailed report from teachers of all grades in all kinds of schools who were surveyed about growth mindset. And they found that almost every teacher surveyed saw amazing potential in Carol Dweck's work for the classroom. And really, as I've said before, these ideas of effort and persistence are ones that we've already taught, but Dweck's work and Duckworth's work give us a framework to approach how we can use it in the classroom. On a whole, though, teachers seem to be at a loss as to how to create that classroom. So let's talk about a couple of things that we can do to help our students develop growth mindsets and become better learners. To me, the first yes.
Sorry, not to interrupt. We did just have a question posed by Patricia about how you could communicate a growth mindset to parents.
I wonder if that's Patty that I grew up with. But anyway, there are some parent resources at the end. I have information about that. Actually, Patricia, what I did this year is we have our grades, all of our syllabuses and stuff are online on Grade Connect. So in my syllabus, I actually connected links to parent resources, and at Back to School Night, I spent most of my time talking about that. The kids I teach, I have AP kids, and I have average kids, and I have struggling kids, and actually it doesn't matter what level it is, but that pressure to get the A, that pressure about the grade, I try to help parents back off about the grade and make it more about the learning. So and again, I also have sent them resources about with Dweck and stuff that says that if you concentrate on when you make a failure, when you fail at something, when you make a mistake, if you concentrate on and how to find a new way around it, the grades naturally they're a byproduct. They just come up. So parents, at every level, I guess we have all of those parents who are more concerned about what that report card looks like rather than what it really represents. And I would say that some of the ways that you could also maybe get this across to parents besides information home would be to have somebody speak at Home and School Association. There's tons of articles, there are tons of resources out there. Depending upon the grade level, I know my kids have gone home and talked to it about their parents. So certainly that's something that, well, all kids could do, K through 12 could go home and say, Mommy and Daddy, I learned today how important it is not to worry if I fail, but to worry about what I can do to learn that. And it seems like almost a nonsensical type of thing, like it doesn't seem that complicated, but it's a huge complication. I hope that answers your question to some level. Excuse me, I have to just cough. So let's talk about how we can foster this in our classrooms. To me, the most obvious step is that we have to develop our own practice, right? We have to have growth mindsets to begin with. So that means really doing some hard work and some hard looking at ourselves. Listen to that self-talk and listen to how we react to the idea of risk, how comfortable we are with failure. We need to be honest with ourselves about our need to continually learn. If we think that we know all there is to being an effective teacher, then we're stuck in a fixed mindset. So I know that whenever I think to myself, oh, I got this, this is a great lesson, I'm doing it great, if I reflect on it, I have to force myself to constantly think, how can it be better? Whenever we look at that we're good enough and we don't have to try harder, that really is a fixed mindset. To embrace a growth mindset, we need to go out of our comfort zones. We need to look at not what we know, but what we don't know. And there's a whole lot of things out there I know I don't know. We need to experience firsthand that cognitive dissonance that deep learning requires. We need to go out of our way to be uncomfortable, and when we're used to being uncomfortable, then we have empathy with our students for knowing what it is to not understand it, or knowing that feeling of struggle. Sometimes we can forget that things that we learn easily, there might be a child or two in a class that just doesn't get that concept in the same way. So for us to have that ability to relate to that is a key factor. To me, I kind of do an analogy that trying to create a classroom environment that fosters growth mindset without having a growth mindset is like trying to teach a writing class without knowing how to write. It requires hard, persistent, gritty work and lots of honesty. So when you catch yourself saying things like, I don't need to know that, stop and challenge yourself. Why are you saying that? Do I really know what that's all about? Am I afraid to look like a failure? I know a lot of people who are hesitant with technology. One of the most significant things that they'll report eventually is that they're afraid to fail. But we have to be okay with failing at times. It's part of life. And we can't have a classroom environment that's fake and doesn't reflect real life. I guess the biggest question we have to ask ourselves are we afraid to be a learner? I think that's the hardest because we're so used to always being in charge and knowing the answer and being the teacher that to turn the tables and think of ourselves as the learners, that's a switch that has to happen. Another thing that research has indicated is that teaching children explicitly how the mind works, how the brain works, about neuroplasticity and about growth mindset is key to fostering a growth mindset. I have some resources for you at the end that go down all the way to kindergarten. Kids have the ability to understand that the brain is an amazing thing, and teaching them how it works. There's a whole Sesame Street video that I just think is adorable about growth mindset. So teaching explicitly how the brain works. It's interesting to see the kids start to think of themselves in a different way. Teach kids about grit. Khan Academy has great resources for students of all levels to begin to understand how their brain works. Teaching students how difficult learning is, that this is not easy stuff, and how learning is a process. It's not a one and done thing. Teaching those things, they're essential in helping children to experience all the good things that come with a growth mindset. But when you get excited about this and when you really start to flip that classroom, don't stop at your students. Teach it to your colleagues. Teach it to your parents, the parents of your students. Teach it to your administrators. Can you imagine how much happier school would be if everybody bought into the idea that with hard work and new strategies, anyone could learn anything? Anything. I mean, that's just an amazing thing. It's no more, I haven't found research on this yet, but I kind of watch it anecdotally through my own students. I have a lot of students that have school anxiety. I had a daughter who had school anxiety. And sometimes, sometimes it's beyond the learning, sometimes it's another issue altogether. But those kids who just don't like school, I'm finding a couple of them in my class, sometimes they don't hate it so much anymore because the pressure is different. It's not really that end result of either you learn it or you fail. It's you learn it and you try and you try and you try and you will get it. One of the biggest hurdles in helping students develop a growth mindset really does have to do with having them hear that voice in their head and then change it. And nothing shows it better than modeling it. Tell your students what you say to yourself, and especially when you learn something challenging. Tell them the good, the bad, the ugly. Talk out loud so they can hear what they can say to themselves. Challenge them to write down or draw, versions of fixed mindset statements. And as a class, turn them into positive growth mindset statements. You can keep a poster or a chart or a chalkboard full of growth mindset statements that they can refer to when their mind starts to get stuck in the fixed position. They're all over Pinterest. They're everywhere. Catch yourself in real time with fixed mindset talk and stop and make it transparent. So a couple of weeks ago, I was getting my digital literacy kids ready to present their story of their life. And what I focus on in this first time is that as they have these beautifully written slides, simple slides, beautiful pictures that they have from that they took themselves, but I don't want them to read the slides. You know, I want to get that generation away from putting the PowerPoint off and just sort of Vanna Whiting it or just reading it word for word. So I said, you know, it's scary. I know it's scary to not be able to say exactly what's on the slide. I said, but a key thing is looking at your audience. So I started to say to them, I said, you know, now, you know, tonight, it happened to be 2 weeks ago, I said, tonight I have to go home and I have to go do this presentation on this thing I really, really love, and I'm not going to see anybody. All they're going to hear is my voice, and my voice is hoarse, and I'm tired, and they don't know me, and they can't see my enthusiasm, and I can't get any feedback from them from seeing them, and it's a really scary thing, and I'm really afraid of it. But I know that if I just try to concentrate very, very carefully on doing the things the way I have imagined them, if I practice it, and if I, you know, keep to the key points and explain it in my own way, it's all going to work out. So the funny thing is, you know, that they did check up on me the next day. You know, how did that go? So whatever comes up, I mean, it comes up all the time. I'm always thinking to myself, oh my God, how are you going to do that? And I go, oh, guys, you're not going to believe Mrs. Szymborski just did another fixed mindset little stint here. If we're not just praising kids for working hard, because that's the criticism that some people give that misunderstand this idea of growth mindset. It's not just about praising kids for effort. And if we're going to train them to look at failures as opportunities to do something different, it's important for us to teach explicit strategies for solving problems in content areas and in thinking in general. So each subject, each discipline has a hidden way, a hidden set of ways to solve problems. We need to focus and refocus, rather, failure as an opportunity to solve a problem. And without a set of tools, I think we set kids up for failure. Now, I've got to be honest and give major credit to my elementary peers, because I think that my students, my children, my real children, the 3 children I gave birth to, as they went through grade school, they had more tips and tricks and mnemonic devices and learning strategies than I ever saw. And in high school, I think we started to try, you know, get away from that. It's coming back now. Like we're really starting to refocus ourselves on giving kids strategies in a toolkit. One thing that is important to do is to spend time debriefing student errors, and that gives us the opportunity to revisit different approaches. So whether you need to offer literacy strategies or specific subject strategies, the key point here is to make visible the invisible process that successful folks follow. So for example, when I ask kids to revise their writing, many don't know where to begin. I know they had it forever. For some reason, they forget things. So I reteach them, and I give them a mnemonic device, radar, that was, you know, given by Kelly Gallagher. Radar means replace. The R is replace, the A is add, D is delete, and the last R is to reorder. So they have a concrete way of going about that revision. It's not just, go ahead, go do it. I know a friend of mine uses this strategy for problem solving called RIDE. Read the problem carefully, identify relevant information, determine operation and unit, enter correct numbers, and calculate. In high school, and I would imagine in the upper grades, they use PEDMAS. I don't think I'm saying that right, math teachers, so please forgive me. That deals with the order of operation, parentheses, exponents, division, multiply. KFC, somebody teaches for keep, flip, and change, for dividing fractions. None of these strategies are new. Here's what's new about them. In classrooms where this information is given, students have the ability to think about how they can rework something that was a failure into something that is successful. Modeling how to revise a sentence or to rework a problem, and students are much more likely to persevere instead of giving up. In a related way, reworking classroom routines to praise process or to reward process over product sets up a situation where learning is valued over grades. That to me is huge. Dweck talks about a school that gives a grade of not yet, actually puts the words not yet on a report card for students who have not mastered a particular skill set. The emphasis on learning as a continuum helps students to see that we mean what we say. They might not have it, they have it, or not yet. They're getting it, they're in the process. And I know that no matter which way we tend to word it, parents start to see through. I remember when the changing grade school report cards went from numbers to O's and VG's and G's, and actually we didn't have VG in the beginning, it was just OGSU, and right away parents are making them A's and B's and C's. I don't know how to change the language to make the parents happy, but we have to make the kids happy, and they're not a failure, they just don't have it yet. It's not yet. The more people that they see that say that, including their teacher, the better it feels for them. Eventually they're going to master the material. You know, no kid is going to graduate from high school in our system not being able to read. Eventually they will read. There was a long time I never thought my son would be able to spell. He could not spell. He could not do short vowels. He could do long vowels. He graduated from college and he's very successful. He learned his phonics, but he had to learn. He had to find different ways, how to persist. Not only is that, though, a great lesson for the classroom, it's a great life lesson. Of course, you know, that's the thing that I think we want the most for our kids. It's not just about learning this material, but it's about being a lifelong learner and being open to learning things. And when it's hard, you try harder. And when you don't do well or you don't succeed, you try a different way. Another video I like, and this is linked for you if you'd like to look on your own time, is a little clip from Benjamin Zander. He's a famous conductor and music teacher, and he teaches, I think, high school to college kids, and in the beginning of a semester, he tells his students that everyone gets an A. What he does is he requires students to write a letter to him early in the semester delineating why they deserve an A. Not only does it set a high bar, but it stops that voice in the head that tells students they're not talented enough or good enough. Students rise to the expectations of an A because their self-talk changes from fixed mindset to growth mindset. Instead of saying things like, I'm not talented enough, they reflect on how they can improve their skills and bring themselves to higher levels. I'm not a primary specialist. My experience of primary grades comes through my own children, but I do know that when kids are told that you will get it eventually, it does make a world of difference. Like, it just helps them to believe in themselves more. Talked a little bit earlier about the ways that we can give feedback in growth mindset statements, and here's an example of some of them. You know, so that golden rule is to praise effort or the process, not the ability or the trait. Saying a kid is smart doesn't do anything but to say that I'm so proud of you for giving it your best effort, and things that are on this slide are good examples of ways to make that shift. So one more thing, equally important in fostering a growth mindset for a classroom, is to create those opportunities for reflection, that metacognitive piece of growth mindset. So much of this transformation takes place in the invisible world of the brain that it's important to help kids make the growth visible on paper. Both teachers and students should develop the habit of looking at what happens in the classroom not as whether it worked or not whether it was correct or not, but on what they learned about the process. In fact, writing about the experience of working through something that would be considered wrong and how to make it correct has implications that are far more extensive than the subject matter. It helps students see that learning occurs in different ways and in different places, and having them reflect on those ways can make their learning stronger. If we do this, we're actually creating a generation of problem solvers. That metacognitive piece is the lock that makes the learning stick. Concentrating on how they were able to move from not yet to yet will help them develop their own set of problem-solving skills, including developing grit and resilience and perseverance that they can transfer to other subjects and other areas outside of school. In that way, we will have helped our kids become lifelong learners. All right, so let's recap. Grit is the key to success. The only way we know to teach grit is through growth mindset. Our beliefs drive our behavior. The way to change those beliefs is through rewiring our brains. We create new neural pathways when we find new ways to approach learning. A growth mindset makes us aware of our self-talk and helps us make new pathways. We found out a few ways that we can use to create a classroom environment that fosters growth mindset in our students. We learned we know that we need to practice it ourselves. We need to model it. We need to teach it explicitly. We need to teach about brain research, learning. We need to teach strategies. We need to praise process over product, and we need to provide opportunities for our kids to reflect on the ways that they solve problems through using those strategies in a persistent, gritty way. It's very easy, I'm sure, right? It's not. But that little change from the fixed mindset to the growth mindset, and the little ways that you help kids just switch their thinking, instead of a failure as being the end, as a failure being something that is interesting and will help them to become a better learner. That tiny change will make a dramatic difference in the lives of our kids, not just while they're in school, but beyond. So before we go to any questions you might have, I just want to point out a few of these resources. So this is the whole Carol Dweck mindset resource. It's very, it's geared toward adults, but it's very informative. Angela Duckworth website, I just love her. She's a really neat lady. I like anybody who's humble enough that she would actually like tweet me back. She answered a tweet, or she retweeted something that I tweeted that had her name in it. Khan Academy has amazing resources. Not only does it go all the way up to grade 12, it goes all the way down to pre-K. So if you look in the Khan Academy, the general lesson plan that they give you is for like an average middle school type class. I used it all the way up to grade 11, but in the resources section of that, they have the Sesame Place or the Sesame Street video I was talking about, and other things for younger learners. The Stanford University PERTS Lab is from where Carol Dweck is from, Stanford University, and they do all kinds of things about growth mindset. They're on Twitter. Their handle is @PERTS. I gave you the link to their website. They have amazing stuff going on. This link to Edutopia is, again, a cross-curricular and a pre-K to 12 section of research of different articles and ideas about growth mindset. There's a recent post about how to promote a growth mindset through the arts, and because somebody had asked earlier how could they work this in a K-2 situation, I did find this absolutely precious a blog of a first grade teacher called Growing Firsties. She has some really neat stuff on there. There's even some workbooks that are available, and I think some free downloads about helping kids, you know, to just change their thinking, and it has to do with drawing. It's just amazing. And again, you know, all within there you will find stuff to send home to parents. So at this point, what I'd like to do is see if there's any questions or comments or anything else that we can discuss.
Kathy, awesome. Thank you so much. As Kathy mentioned, certainly if you have any questions, feel free to be able to raise your hand if you would like to ask Kathy a question now. We'll be taking any questions while we look for any hands being raised. Alyssa or Aaron, anything else that popped up in in the question window, or anything that you feel like you would like to bring up at this point.
One thing that I wanted to share, the question came up earlier, and Kathy talked wonderfully about addressing this with parents. And I put in the chat window, just in case you missed that, our AoPTech parent newsletters for September and October did address growth mindset for parents, an introduction to that in September, and then followed up with some great language parents could use at home to partner that with what's going on in school. It was in the October issue. And if you did not see those, or those didn't come your way, all of our newsletters are archived on the Weebly site at ptech.weebly.com. If you scroll down on the homepage, there's an archive of all of our newsletters there. So another way that maybe at schools you can get that conversation started, and that can follow up either with a parent workshop or at a back to school night. But feel free to use those to springboard a great conversation with your parents as well.
I mean, I can share my own experience with growth mindset. I taught ninth grade inclusion basic English for 4 years, and I saw students who struggled with failure on a regular basis, and helping them to see failure not as an end point but as a starting point was tremendous. And then myself personally, I went from teaching a lower level inclusion class to I was offered a new job teaching 11th grade honors, and one of the reasons I took that job was because I knew that it was going to be an opportunity to use growth mindset myself. And I talked about that in my interview. I said, this will be an exciting time for me because I know I'm going to grow, and I know there's going to be some failures, but I also know that from those failures I'm ultimately going to become a better teacher. So as much as I got to see my students using growth mindset, it's impacted me personally as well.
Something that just came in privately to the chat window here that I wanted to share was that if you are a teacher that utilizes Class Dojo also has videos for growth mindset. So if you utilize Class Dojo, it's under the Big Ideas videos. There are growth mindset ones. And if you don't use Class Dojo, it's a classroom management piece in there for behavior. I believe it's free. So if you are looking to utilize that also, you would need an account for those videos, but know that those are there too. So thanks for that being shared in our chat.
Well, it looks like there are no questions that are going to be coming through that our attendees are going to ask. Kathy, I want to thank you for your time and just putting this presentation together. Certainly from our conversations, I know that this is really a passion of yours, and I think it's really great to be able to bring this to the forefront. There's so much going on in education right now, so much, both in public and private education in regards to, testing and outcomes and monitoring students and their performance. And when we get down to it, we really need to be able to set up students for, their lives and for them to be successful. And certainly content area is a big piece of that. But for them to learn, know, understand how they deal personally with failure, and that failure is okay when put in the right framework, I think it's a very powerful message. So I really want to thank you for bringing this to us and sharing not only your expertise, but more so your passion about this.
Thank you, Bill.
And I do see that there are a couple of questions that might be popping up in the questions window. Alyssa, anything that's popping up there now that that might be beneficial to bring up?
Just lots of praise for Kathy. So that's what's popping up. So thanks for the folks who are sending that in. I will be sure to pass that along.
Well, excellent.
You know what what, Bill, I wanted to add on to something you said is that I think so frequently when people ask us, like, what do you teach? And I guess an answer somebody would say is, oh, I teach second grade or I teach English. I think that we need to start to think about what we say is that we teach children, and that human element, that, instead of it being about a content, about just being about a person who learns. I think that really underscores what growth mindset is really all about.
Absolutely, and I know as a as a teacher and as a administrator, I struggled with how we could work to get our students to put themselves in the right mind frame, and we basically adopted an acronym where the kids had a "Can I" attitude, and that "Can I didn't create it myself. I borrowed it from somebody out in education, but it was a continuous and never-ending improvement. And if we can do that, if we can continue to look at failure as truly as opportunity, and just as you said, that we are teaching kids and we're not just teaching subjects, we will certainly prepare these students for great success and wonderful lives as they continue to grow and move forward to be able to serve our communities and our society as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And I think it really is to teach as Jesus would. So. Not to give that short shrift, but that really is our vocation.
Absolutely. And with that, I would like to thank, again, Kathy, thank you for all your time and preparation. And certainly I am grateful for everyone for attending this evening, for your interest. If you saw in the chat window, there was a link to a survey. As we talk about growth mindset, we certainly continue to evolve in these presentations and want to learn how to meet your needs better and more consistently, and look for your feedback. So that was just popped in again, and that will also be in the follow-up email that you will receive tomorrow night with all of the resources as well. So please take an opportunity, just a minute or two, to be able to provide the feedback for us so that we can improve these offerings for you. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday evening. I hope you have a great Thursday and a wonderful end to the week and a very blessed weekend. For those who I will see at the Google workshop on Saturday, we're looking forward to closing that out. And thanks again for joining us this evening. Have a great night.